Hey guys, it's Mikkel again, and let's jump right into this topic. How can you make your training harder? I know when people think about making training harder, they automatically think they can only make their training harder by increasing the amount of weight they lift or by increasing the amount of volume they do. And yes, this is true, but there are so many other ways you can make your training more difficult that people often overlook. Earlier on in my lifting career, I also overlooked these other factors that I'm about to speak about. But as I've progressed within my training and almost after 5 years of lifting consistently, I use these techniques to make my training more difficult when appropriate. On to my first point, increase your time under tension. There are so many people I come across in the gym that just go through the movements without even thinking about contracting their muscles. Or in other words, their mind-muscle connection is far from good and they end up getting a very poor muscle contraction with whatever exercise they may be performing. Come on, let's be real. I'm sure you've seen someone doing bicep curls like this. No, you don't want to be doing that. Instead about caring about how much weight you're lifting or about how many repetitions you're doing, focus more on slowing down your repetitions to increase your time under tension, and this will trigger more muscle growth. However though, your time under tension should only be increased during the eccentric portion of your movement. For example, during the concentric portion of a bicep curl, I don't want you to make it as slow as possible, but at the same time, I don't want you to make it as explosive as possible. Instead, aim for a controlled tempo during the concentric portion. Producing a concentric force deliberately slowly can fail to recruit high motor threshold units, while moving as quickly as possible can fail to load fibers with a sufficiently high force. However, in the lowering/eccentric phase, when your muscle fibers are lengthening, it's a whole different story. During this portion of the movement, in order to increase your muscles' time under tension, you want to make it as slow as possible. And this is going to increase the amount of force production, and ultimately, this is going to make the exercise so much harder. Additionally, another way to increase your time under tension and to make your repetitions even harder is by pausing your reps. The scientific term for this is called an isometric contraction. During this portion of the exercise, the muscle is activated, but instead of being allowed to lengthen or shorten, it is held at a constant length. So, for example again, during a bicep curl, an isometric contraction would be pausing at the top of the curl and holding it for a few seconds. I do these with a lot of different exercises and they burn. So to summarize this whole first point, you want to increase your time under tension during the eccentric portion of any movement while keeping your concentric portion as controlled as possible, not too fast but not too slow. And you also can pause your reps, and all of these are guaranteed to make your exercises harder. I personally have been training at home for the past 5 months because gyms are closed where I live and the weights I have at home are very light. So I make sure to incorporate these techniques I just mentioned in order to make my workouts more challenging. If I didn't incorporate these techniques, I probably would have lost muscle mass by now. On to my second point, decrease your rest time in between sets. Unless you are strength training, I would highly recommend reducing your rest time if you're looking for another way to make your training sessions more difficult. Here is my recommendation though. If you're reducing your rest times, as long as it's not inhibiting your sets and making your sets inefficient, then reducing your rest time can be your go-to. But if it is, then reducing your rest time shouldn't be your go-to. You always want to make sure that you're putting 100% of your effort within your sets. But if you're reducing your rest time and you can't put in 100% effort, then don't reduce your rest time. Or maybe it is you're reducing your rest time in between sets too much. So when I say reduce your rest times, take this with a grain of salt. I don't expect you to have 20-second rest times in between your sets, unless you're doing something like HIIT training. But if you're doing hypertrophy training, having 20-second rest times in between sets is a no-no. I believe there's a time and place where you can reduce your rest time. From my experiences, since I don't have access to a gym right now and the weights I have at home are very light, I reduce my rest time significantly to increase the intensity of my workouts. Even if I was working out in an actual gym, there would be times I would decrease my rest time in between sets if I was working with lighter weights. So yeah guys, if you want, really play around with reducing your rest times in between sets to make your workouts more challenging. But remember, there's a time and place for this to be done. This is a good technique to run off to since I just talked about reducing your rest times, but the implementation of supersets. Supersets are simply when you perform 2 exercises back to back without resting. At the gym, I love using supersets when I'm doing isolation exercises on smaller muscle groups, and it's normally at the end of my workouts, and I would recommend you doing it this way. Don't do supersets at the start of your workout. At the start of your workout, you should always focus on performing the most challenging exercise and not supersets, in my opinion. Anyways, as I said earlier, I currently train at home with lighter weights, so I also incorporate supersets to make my workouts more challenging. Increase your range of motion or make sure you're doing the full range of motion with your exercises. I used to be a culprit of reducing my range of motion with exercises when I was new to lifting. Now, if I catch myself shortening my range of motion, I immediately fix it. Think about it. Having a reduced range of motion is only going to reduce the amount of effort your muscles have to put in. And obviously, if you increase your range of motion, it's going to exert more effort out of your muscles and it's going to increase your time under tension, of course. There are way too many people I see in the gym doing half reps on exercises like the squats, not fully extending their arm on the way down during a pull-up, shortening the range of motion, not bringing the bar to their chest during a bench press, and even not fully extending their arm on the way down during a bicep curl, and the list goes on. Don't be one of these people and make sure you're doing the full range of motion during your exercises to get the most out of it, and it's going to make your workouts more challenging. And that's it for today's video guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and popping up are 2 other videos that you may like. Until next time, peace.